optional workshop breakout rooms will not be recorded. You can experiment and practice giving up impromptu speech with a little bit of privacy. So, but welcome to Intro to Public Speaking. This is a presentation via WomenWhoCode Tokyo. And my name is Ann Kilzer. I am a software engineer at Mercari, and I've recently also become a director of WomenWhoCode Tokyo. I'm originally from Montana in the United States. I've spent 2.5 years living in Japan. I've been doing public speaking since high school, and I've given presentations in Osaka at DevCon, WomenWhoCode Connect in Singapore, and Velocity Conference in San Jose. Those are some of the at least bigger conferences.
So hi everyone, my name is Ania. I'm a software engineer at Vertisize, and I'm also a director of WomenWhoCode Tokyo. So I'm originally from Poland, and I've spent 11 years in Japan. And last year I joined Code Chrysalis Coding Bootcamp, where I was learning how to code, but also during this course, there was a big focus on public speaking, and I needed to give a lot of lightning talks and also one longer tech talk during the course. Okay, so here's the outline of our today's event. So first we'll start by speaking a bit what's the good thing about giving a public talk and how to overcome your fear. Then we'll move on to present some hints about how you can choose the content of your talk and what venues can you present in Tokyo. We'll give you some ideas how you can design your slides and what are some anti-patterns that we encountered. And on the last part, we will talk about how to deliver your speech, both on the events in person and online events, and how to handle some difficult questions from the audience. So after the event, there will be a Q&A session where you can ask some questions. And after that, there will be workshops that's only for people who want to participate, but we strongly encourage everyone to join because it's a very safe, nice space and everyone can get some support from other participants. Okay, so first of all, why do public speaking? So since you've already joined this event, I imagine that you're interested in doing some speeches and you would like to get some ideas how to start with it. So maybe you can have now a minute and type in the chat, what's the main reason why you decided to join this workshop? Or what key thing you would like to get away from this? And maybe while you're doing this, we can go through some reasons that we came up with in the next slide. Thanks. So here are some reasons that we thought are a great reason to start a public speaking. So first of all, doing a talk is a great way to share your perspective with other people and also transfer knowledge. So even though you might be thinking that some project you're working on currently, maybe it's not the most fascinating thing, but if you make a presentation about what you've learned from it, it might be very helpful for the people and give them some ideas for the work that they're doing. The second thing is that also it gives very good impression for your company and the project you're working on. So it may encourage other people to join your company. And it's great networking space where you can meet other professionals that work in the same field and get some other ideas and feedback on your project. Some other good thing about giving a talk, it's a travel opportunity. So for example, if the conference is held in some country that you've never been to, well, you can also use it as a means to travel there. You can increase your professional network and maybe find some other people working in the field that you can connect to even long after the event is finished. It looks great on your resume. And the last thing is that you can improve your public speaking skills. So the more you do it, the better you will get with it. Okay, so I will check what answers everyone sent. I can see some people want to start doing their first tech talk, or there are some people that already have tech talk scheduled and need to get some knowledge. So that's awesome. Yeah, a lot of people just join to improve their presentation skills and already have some ideas about the events they will participate. So that's awesome. Okay, so maybe we can move on to the next part. Yes, so the biggest obstacle that people find when giving a tech talk is that it can be very vulnerable, that when you're standing in front of a lot of people and you're speaking about something. And there is a big fear with speaking in front of a big group of people. So there is no one solution that fits everyone. So we decided to maybe talk about how each of two of us deals with this fear and what we do to overcome it. So for me, because I'm very shy and introverted person, the public speaking is a terrifying experience. And I remember that last year when I was joining Code Chrysalis, the moment I heard that there is a big tech talk involved in the course, I immediately decided not to do it because the idea was too scary for me. But what I did, it was just mute all the ideas in my head that tell me not to do it and immediately apply it, so that I don't have excuse, and then I just have to do something about it. So this is kind of the strategy I'm trying to do from now on, that every time someone invites me for some event or is there some opportunity, I immediately say yes before I have a lot of reasons in my head not to do it. And then it's that I don't have to think about the excuses. I can just focus on actually doing the tech talk and preparing for it. So it helps me personally. So next, Anne will say about her strategy.
Sure. Yeah. So when I was in middle school, I used to be extremely shy to the point that other students would ask me in the hallway, "Do you talk?" That's kind of a mean thing to say, but yeah, I just was not very good at expressing myself verbally. And I thought, this is going to be a big challenge for me. I had to give some presentations in high school, and I'm holding these papers trying to read my notes and I'm shaking. So for some reason, I got in my head, I should join speech and debate and just kind of dive into the fire and just figure it out. I don't know how I did it, but I did. And it's sort of like immersion therapy. Actually, I've got a good slide for this of the cat overcoming its fear. This is a Dune reference. But sometimes you just got to put yourself in a challenge and find a place, find people that support you and make the best of it. I know that might not work for everyone, but it's just sharing what worked for me. And as you do it more and more, you start to see, oh, I survived that, or, oh, I didn't give my best presentation, but you know what? I got through it. And now I learned things so I can give a better presentation my next time. Yeah. What to present. So this is one of the hardest things is for tech talks. You'll often see a call for applications or someone will say, we'd love to get you on stage. Oh, but do I have anything worth presenting? I'm sure you do. Everybody has something interesting that they've done. So just talk about something you've worked on. It could be a recent project. Even if the project wasn't a wild success, talk about an obstacle that you overcame. Maybe teach people how to do something, maybe you figured out something that you think is fairly mundane, but you might have a perspective on it that no one else has seen, how you set up a coding environment or how you introduce people there, and consider different audiences for your talk too. Maybe your talk is aimed at beginners, maybe your talk is aimed at students, maybe your talk is aimed at experts. Maybe your talk is aimed at a wide audience that contains beginners and experts, and you want to start at the beginning and make sure everyone's on board. And maybe in the last part, you want to get into some advanced research. So, you could talk about a story. Tech talks often will even have sort of side tracks that might be about management or diversity and things adjacent to tech, but that are important in tech. and wider presentations too. Like, what's the human angle on it? What's, you have a unique perspective on things. So we'd love to just raise your hand and sign up to talk. Where to present? That's the next question, is like, okay, I have an idea. Where do I present it? It's often good to start small. We don't all start out at a big stadium, presenting for an audience of thousands of people. Often our first talks are in our schools or in a club. Maybe you just give a presentation to some of your coworkers and teach them something There's organizations of, youth organizations like the Girl Scouts. It has like international chapters, or schools, and they often love having outside guests that will come talk to students about interesting job opportunities. There's organizations like Toastmasters, which are dedicated to helping people become better speakers. And also, you can start small, not just in terms of the audience, but in terms of the scope. Maybe your first talk, it doesn't have to be an hour-long seminar. Pardon me, I work with a little cat here. She's joining. Lightning talks can be 5 to 10 minutes. They can be a great way to get that little bit of experience, but it's going to be less preparation. It's going to be more to the point, and you can get your toes wet.
So here we listed few places in Tokyo that are holding events that you can join and give some talks. So first of all, WomenWhoCode Tokyo. Recently we did a lightning talk event, and we definitely plan to do some in the future, where you could just choose the subject you're interested in and make a lightning talk about it. There's Code Chrysalis and Lewagon, which are 2 coding bootcamps in Tokyo, which are also holding the lightning talks events quite often. Also Tokyo Tech Talk and Tokyo FinTech Meetup. And Nerd Night is also a great place. Also on Nerd Night, you don't need to do tech-related topics. You can also choose something that you're very passionate about and do a talk about it. So it's also a great event to start with. And if you check the meetup page or PTX and Doorkeeper, you can find a lot of events that are going on in Tokyo. So there's definitely a lot of places where you can start.
For international events and national events, you'll often get a call for entries. So you might see it on Twitter or LinkedIn or through your network. Often the speaking opportunities I've participated in, like a senior woman at my company was like, hey, you should apply to this and you should use the project you worked on. And that push, we weren't sure about it, but I was actually able to get into this really awesome conference, and it helped me at my job when I was working at Indeed in the past. So, and a real important thing is to just raise your hand. There's lots of times that we often think, ooh, am I good enough? And that's really easy to rule yourself out before the committee. There's going to be a committee that decides what talks are the right fit for the event. And, that you're going to read your proposal, which you should, definitely get proofread. But yeah, like it's easy to just say, I'm not going to submit, but let them be the judge of that, because you never know. Maybe you have something really cool, and especially women, we often underestimate ourselves. For presentations, just one thing to put out there is you should never be paying to give a presentation, at least in the technical realm. Even in the wider world, that seems fishy. If there's anything that says call for entries, and then you're paying to apply, that's not really the way the work should go. You as a speaker are giving your time and energy. And while often early on or in, let's see, academic conference, I have some background in academia and academic conferences because I went to grad school. You're often expected to give speeches for free, but at the same time, they're going to waive your cost to the event. Or there might be a budget, if you're an independent speaker, you have to fly somewhere, you have to travel somewhere, there's going to be some costs that are either going to be covered by the event, by your company, by a scholarship. There are some times where if it's like a nonprofit organization, you might pay, but yeah, just make sure that you're getting some value out of it. You're not just giving away your things for free. Next, I'm going to talk about how to build a slide deck. Let's see, there's a question here. Yeah, when you work, there's a quick question here. When you work at a company and give an external presentation, do you need to approve your talk with marketing people from your company? Yes, usually I would always ask if you're sharing anything from a private company, make sure you get the right people to sign off on it, because yeah, you don't own the company's data and you want to make sure that you present them in a good light. All right, I'm going to move on, and then we'll do the rest of the Q&A at the end, actually. Making a slide deck. Oh, Ania, I think this is your section, actually.
No problem. Yes, so making a slide deck. So you don't need to be a designer to create a really nice slide decks. And actually online, there is a lot of tools that are free and you can use them to create a really professional looking slides. So we chose 3 examples here. So first of all, Google Slides, probably everyone knows it. Our presentation is also in Google Slides. It has a lot of very simple slide decks designs, and it's also very nice to share with everyone. So this is like a basic tool, but we really recommend using Canva because you can find there also a lot of very beautiful templates that you can customize to your needs. And even though there's a paid plan, the free plan has quite a lot of functions that you can use. And the last one is called Prezi. And maybe a lot of people don't know it yet, but it's a kind of tool that doesn't create like a slide deck, but you have to think about it more like a mind map kind of. It's one slide connected where you can zoom in and zoom out to a lot of details with some nice animation. So it requires definitely a lot of more preparation on your part, but it creates like a really engaging and unique presentation. So if you're looking for this kind of tool, Prezi is a really great one. And about the slide content, so it's good to think about each slide to be just concentrating on one idea, so not to cram too many things into one slide. And you can talk about maybe less than 1 minute on one slide to make the presentation also a bit dynamic. And for people who listen, it's very, very hard to read and listen at the same time. So if you put huge blocks of text on your slides, people may just start reading from the slides and stop listening to what you're saying. So it's very good to make the slides very visual, include a lot of pictures that kind of convey the ideas that you're talking about, but not to overcram them with text, so that it's the audience can focus on what you're saying and the slides just complement the talk, not distract from everything that's happening. And the content that you put in also depends on what kind of talk are you giving. So the lightning talks, as we talked about, it's a very quick talk, around maybe 5 minutes. So it's a great place to start when you're a beginner. And since it's only 5 minutes and it should be very concentrated talk, you have to really focus on creating like the biggest impact to draw the audience attention from the start, make some eye-catching first slide with some title, and also make very visual and very little text slides. So because the talk is so concentrated, I found that a good idea is to make the elevator test to test if your content is very like focused on one idea. So elevator test is kind of, you have to imagine that if you go to elevator with someone and you need to talk about your presentation, you should convey all the content in around 30-40 seconds. So which is the time that you spent in elevator with someone. So you can try like doing this test with the content you're trying to deliver. And because in 5 minutes, you cannot really tell everything that you have to say on the subject, it's good to also include all the additional resources in the end and your contact information so that you can make the presentation simple, but the audience who's more interested can easily contact you or get more information from the topic you talked about.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk about a slide structure for longer non-lightning presentations, which can usually be, you know, say 20 minutes to longer. And this is just a suggestion. This is not the structure you have to use, but this is just a starting point. So we like to start out with the title slide. You know, what are we going to talk about? An introduction of the speaker or speakers, an overview or thesis statement, like what is this presentation? What are going to be the main points, or is there some idea that you're bringing forward? It's also helpful to put an outline just to kind of show where the event is going to go, and then the actual contents of the presentation inside there. One thing I'll mention, depending, especially if you have a mixed level audience, it's okay to start out in the beginning and have 100% of your audience getting it. And then maybe in the last few minutes of your presentation, maybe if you're an hour-long presentation and in the last 5 minutes, you want to get into something where not everyone might follow. Sometimes that's the way it goes, and it's okay to lose people a little bit at the end, but you want to make sure at the beginning to not lose people. Otherwise, of course, you know, people are going to check out. But sometimes, especially if you're getting really deep into a subject, you'll want to challenge and go to it in advanced areas, and people can always follow up more in the Q&A. You know, wrap it up with a good conclusion, try to be catchy, or, you know, if you can, otherwise just repeat your main points. And then you can have a question and answer session. I usually just put a slide that says Q&A and put the contact info in case people want to reach out via email or Twitter. Another trick that I do that I learned in grad school is to have hidden slides. Often when you're working on a really big project, you might have more information than you can put in your slides, because again, we want to keep those slides really minimal and to the point. But what if, you know, somebody asks a question on something and I don't have the data in my slides? Well, I can put it at a secret slide at the end of the presentation. I can put things that I've cut out of my presentation. And if someone asks that question, that surprise question in the Q&A, I can just move to there and say, oh, and I have that chart. I didn't have time for it in my talk, but since you brought it up, let's talk about it. For colors and styling, simple formatting is going to be cleaner, easier to follow. It's really important to maintain good contrast, especially when presenting on a projector, which often has a lower light. I've given presentations where the background I used was too dark, and because it looked great on a computer screen, and then on a projector, it looked very different. There's kind of current trends in design, web design, presentation, sort of flat, minimal designs. So we're using just the Google's material slide deck. Plain white works well. There's a lot of things that just can be kind of simple colors. I want to take people through a couple anti-patterns based on things I've seen in the wild, sort of the what not to do, what not to wear of slides. First one is, again, I'm sort of picking on myself in middle school. This is the sort of presentation I would have made in 1998, where I would just pick like the most futuristic looking PowerPoint slide and just type a lot of things in bright colors. And what happens here is, I mean, it's certainly interesting and engaging, but when you type your black text over it, there's high contrast. But then when it goes over the blue, the contrast is low. I could change the color to try and, you know, okay, the red is going to contrast against white and blue, but over the blue area, we're starting to get eye strain, especially when we get into the pink, because it's almost too much contrast. So yeah, avoid the crazy PowerPoint backgrounds. Also can just have too much information, just too much text on a slide. So here, just listing a bunch of fruits. For some reason, I've made the bullets to be checkboxes, which kind of looks confusing too, because it's like, is this a grocery list or is this information? What are we doing? Sorry, Japanese government. I appreciate all the good work they're doing to help keep us safe, but this chart really confused me. And there's a really important message here about how we can stay safe with the new coronavirus guidelines, but it's kind of lost because there are so many things happening at the same time in this chart. Let me just see if I can get the annotate function, or Was it more? I don't know if I can do it any mouse. But here, like the, oops, no, it's not working. I thought there was the zoom control where I could show my mouse, but I'm going to just skip that. It's confusing, but anyway, we'll see in the center of this chart. Oh, let me go back. Goodness. And I can't go back. Okay. In the center of this chart, you know, there's a lot of different lines, and one seems to be correlated to the axes. We have the number of new infections, but then we have a green line that says expand capacity of the medical care system. And that seems, I guess that's to hold the number of infections, but raise the level at which counter cluster measures. So these things are put against the same y-axis, but they don't all quite map to that y-axis. And yeah, there's just a lot of lines going everywhere. So again, it's an important message, but it's lost by the amount of text and diagramming on this page. Maybe it could be broken into a few different charts. All right, mislabeled data. These are common too, because, you know, you just put in a graph, and sometimes depending on how your graph is labeled, it's hard for people to understand the important work you've done. So for the pie chart, okay, we see, you know, some different items and they are added up, and it seems like they don't add up to 100%. So what is it, for 80? Yeah, we've got 84 plus 11 plus 5. So there's definitely something missing in there. And thanks for the comments. Yeah, and then the other one, we see that there's these different teams and they have some numbers, but that there's this line between them, almost as if this data is continuous or connected. So I kind of wonder, what is a team 1.5? Because the line implies there's a team 1.5 there. What does that look like? Or what does that mean? So really what should happen is for the team one, we should be using a bar chart or something with discrete data, discrete points, and not continuous data, because this doesn't make sense. And we also need to label the y-axis. What are we measuring? What is this? For the pie chart, it's just a lot better to take the key and actually just annotate the things directly, because then your eye doesn't have to bounce back and forth. And also some of these things for the color chart, there's, you know, issues like red-green color blindness, where users might not know what is, you know, which one is which. So it's often good to use like patterning or color, or just label things directly. Another common one, again, picking on myself in 7th grade, just using too many fonts. There's a time to get creative with fonts, and you can do it for making a card or sending things, but fonts can kind of work against your message if you're using too many. So try to stick to 1 to 2 fonts. If you're using something that's really stylized, make sure it matches the tone of your event. Again, this kind of curly one, I think it's called Syncopot. It's like something I would have loved in middle school. There's one that looks like a wedding invitation. This one looks like an arcade. Monospace are great for code, not super great for just other text or readability, but, you know, they're for your computer terminal where everything needs to be the same character. So, what fonts do I recommend? Quite like the Google Fonts resource. Actually, this ties into free resources for graphics. A lot of things that, well, you'll have the rights to use them. Google Fonts has wonderful things in multiple languages, and it'll let you pair them. They actually have really wonderful fonts in Japanese and Korean too. I like Roboto. That's the font that's been using here. You know, anyone design-minded will say Helvetica is standard. I think like a standard a sans serif, that means it doesn't have the little decorative parts, or a serif if you want to look a little more formal, like Times New Roman. There's a lot that looks similar, but I just say pick one of those, and that can be a good starting point. Or look at what other people are doing in presentations, and if you have the rights to use the font, use the same font. So yeah, you can make good looking presentations without having a budget of, you know, a really fancy company. You can get professional, beautiful stock photography where you have the rights to use it and you don't have to pay anything, from sites like Unsplash, Pexels, and Pixabay. There's a lot of beautiful icons on the noun project that have various terms. Sometimes you'll have to cite them, but they're still kind of lovely. And if you do need to buy them, they're only a couple dollars. So, you know, it could be something you could say, your company, I need to expense this. Google Fonts, again, really great materials there. And then for graphics, there's a lot of free open source illustrations. In this presentation, we're using undraw.co. And it's really nice because it's inclusive. It shows, you know, men, women, different people of different races, different skin tones, and you can choose the color. You could put in the hex code of the main color so it can work with different websites and projects. Humans is kind of similar, but it's a little more build and assemble. Canva.com is freemium, but it has this offering where you can assemble different graphics together and has like large stock photography libraries, and you can actually upload your own things. OpenPeeps is like little illustrations of faces. DrawKit, I guess, is for composing your own images. And then one that I think is kind of cool, but it's freemium. So most of their stuff's paid, but it's called Black Illustrations. And it's neat because it's addressing the issue of most of stock photography and graphic assets being white faces, and it's just adding more diversity and inclusion. They're like, let's make sure that we have, you know, different types of people represented in our slide decks. So that's awesome. Oh, somebody's suggesting another cool one. Pop-ins. Oh, cool. Nice. Yeah, another really helpful tool is maybe you found a really good image and you're not sure if you have the intellectual property rights to use it. So there's this cool search engine called TinEye. So I wanted to use this picture of a tiger in this presentation, but I wasn't sure who owned it. So I uploaded it to TinEye. It turns out it's owned by Getty Images. And so again, they're very premium and they have beautiful things, but it's a little more above the price range for this. Want to do a free event, and it seems to also belong to a Ringling Brothers archive. And, you know, maybe I could have emailed the Ringling people and asked, may I have the rights to use this? But I thought, for this presentation, it's okay. I can make my own images or just skip it. For humor, that can be certainly something, you know, you can add, and I don't worry as much about adding a GIF. It depends on the presentation. It can lighten the mood a lot. It's important to be yourself when, you know, using humor in a presentation. Don't force it. Know your audience too. I'm intentionally using a joke that might flop here. And because it's an online event, I can't hear if anyone's laughing. I'm just going to imagine that you're laughing hilariously. But, you know, I'm using a GIF from an American television show, The Office, of Dwight giving a very dramatic speech. And that might not land to an audience of people around Japan, and that's fine. Just make sure you recover if you have a joke that isn't, you know, doesn't land, just move on.
Okay, so now some content about how to deliver your actual presentation. So maybe you can move to the next slide. Yay. So the most important thing about giving a presentation is to practice and practice as much as possible, because you might imagine that when you practice too much, you might remember the presentation and you might sound like you're just reading. But actually, if you practice really a lot, you get so much confidence that you actually are able to deliver the presentation in a more natural way. So you might starting with practicing just on your own and speaking the whole presentation aloud, not just in your mind. And even though probably most of us hate listening to our own voices, it's sometimes good to record your own presentation. And maybe while listening, you can get some hints about what to improve, even though it might be painful for you. So you can also ask your friends and colleagues for some feedback. And maybe also to ask you some questions, maybe some tough questions that may be asked by the audience after your presentation, so that you might have some answers ready as well. And a very important thing is to also time yourself, because at the day of the presentation, you might be nervous and you might be speaking also a bit too fast. I'm pretty sure I'm speaking faster than normal today. So if you time yourself and while you practice, you speak, for example, too short, it's pretty, very possible that on the day of the presentation, you might be way before the time. So try not to be too before the time, and also not to cross over the time that's required. Oh, I think you're on mute.
It's not an intentional joke. Speaking clearly is important. You want to make sure you have eye contact, keeping a bottle of water on hand. And yeah, again, as Ania said, you know, watch the clock. I'm going to keep a clock near me and make sure, yeah, you don't run out of time and have to skip parts of your presentation. Project. Some of us are quiet and soft-spoken, and some of us are very loud. For the people who are really good at projecting, use a mic. Even if you think, oh, I have a booming voice and I can reach the back of the room, there might be people with hearing impairments that really need you to use a mic, even if you think you're super loud. So always use a mic. It just helps everyone. And I want to give some tips because, you know, we're in this new lifestyle where we're giving presentations online. We might not be on a stage for a long while. So I'm going to talk about some things that I've learned. So eye contact in 2020, it looks a little different. Actually, I'm not doing the best at it tonight because I'm looking at the faces on my screen instead of looking at the camera. So if I look more at the camera, it's going to be more engaging, but it's a bit of a trick because the faces of the audience are over to the side. So that can be a little bit of a thing. If you have to stick a little mascot behind your computer to remind you, to give you a pair of eyes to look at, that could help. For audio, again, not taking my own advice tonight, apologies, because I lost the cable for my headphones. But if you do have headphones, it can reduce the feedback, and that can make it better for people to hear. I don't want to suggest a bunch of tools and things that make people feel like they have to go and buy things. You know, you probably have a setup that works. If you have a built-in mic on your computer, it should be fine. But if you are giving a lot of talks and, you know, if you want to level up, there are cheap podcasting mics. I happened to buy one a number of years ago, and it's nice because it's like super portable. So it sort of clips onto things and then folds. So because I already had that, I'm still using that. But again, you know, use what you have. If you have just a mic on your computer, it will work well too. And if you're logging in from multiple devices, maybe you need to present from one computer and have your camera on another one, be sure to mute and turn off volume on one of that to avoid that, you know, ringing sound that happens. For the camera, there's some really helpful tips some of these pictures are from Tom Ford, the fashion designer, makeup brand and things. So if you raise your camera a little bit above your head and point it down to your eyes, it's going to be a better angle than say the, you know, up from the chin. So again, you don't need to buy a fancy laptop stand or anything. You could just use a stack of books, but we're used to kind of viewing people down a little bit, and that's going to just feel more natural. For lights, we're going to want our lighting to come from above. If it comes from below, it starts to look like Halloween. And again, you know, that can affect a choice, but we're not telling ghost stories around the campfire. So the sun is going to be above, so we want to be lit from above. Now, you can get these ring lights on Amazon and different places, but, you know, again, I'm not trying to hear like shill for Amazon. One thing you can do is if you're just giving a one-off presentation, if you don't feel like the light in your room is very good, you could just take any old lamp that you have and diffuse the light a little bit with a paper. So, you know, if you take, let's say washi paper actually would work really well if you have it, but if you just shine a light through a paper, see how it softens it a bit, and you could still get a nice glow and things. So if you have a light that's too bright, just, you know, DIY and put something together. Another trick from Tom Ford is to have a little bit of light coming from below. Again, not the Halloween amount of light, but just the difference between, so I have this sheet of white paper here and it's just under my face. And see, when I go from like a black surface under here to white, that it actually shifts a little bit and I get just a little bit of light filling in my face. All right, so that's your quick like tech set, or as far as like theater tech. And next I'd like to talk about how to handle a question and answer session, which can often be scary because, you know, it's the one part of the talk where you're really exposed. You get to see what people think and what they say, and they might disagree with you or challenge you. However, try to view it as an opportunity, because if you get a lot of questions, it actually means people connected with your talk. And even if there are tough questions, it means that people are interested and engaged. If you get no questions, I don't know, you know, maybe people were on their phones or something. So if the person asking doesn't have a mic, or, you know, if you're in an in-person event and the person doesn't have a mic, just repeat the question. Again, that's an accessibility thing. That's going to make sure people in the room heard it and as everyone is on the same page. And it's also okay to not know all the answers with the Q&A. That's totally fine. I mean, it's about learning and growing as a community. So there's always tough questions. I've come up with a couple different personas of what I consider different question askers I've seen at events. And here they are. I'm going to talk about who they are, what they look like, and how to work with them. So first of all is the softball, which I guess is maybe a little friendly, but it's not going to get you into that growth zone. So they're going to ask you a question that's really straightforward. They're going to give you a ton of compliments. Maybe they'll just say like, "Oh, I just loved your talk," and that's awesome, and that feels really good. Be grateful. Next type will be the challenger, though. And while the challenger might feel a little scarier, the challenger is going to push you into that growth zone that's going to really make the event cool. So they're going to ask questions that bring forth a lively and interesting discussion. And, you know, again, it's really helpful to keep some extra slides beyond the Q&A in preparation. If you don't know something, just say, "That's a really great point," or "I didn't think about that," or "Wow, that would be neat for a future research." You can always say, "Let's take this offline," if you'd like to go chat with them later, and, you know, give them, if their question is getting too long and you want to have time for other questions, you know, you as the speaker, again, have the power in kind of moderating the Q&A and saying, "I'm going to answer that one later," or let's let some other people talk. There are sometimes there's a mic hog, and it's just people that they might just be too enthusiastic or have something to sell, but they spend a lot of time in the Q&A talking about themselves or their product. And sometimes there's not even a question in it, which is really funny. But often you can ask, if you want to be direct, you can say, "Well, did you have a question?" And you can just make sure, "Did you have a question? Did I get your," you know? And if not, just say, "Okay." You can say, "Let's take it offline." You can acknowledge and move on. Again, you know, remember, it's your talk, it's your event. Take control and set boundaries as needed, you know, kindly but firmly, and move on to people with you know, real questions. The last one is the contrarian, and this type is extremely rare. So I don't want anyone to think, "Oh my God, giving a public speech is going to be terrible and I'm going to get attacked." I just want to mention it because, especially in the environments I was in, which was competitive speech and debate, academic computer science, these people sort of show up. You know, I'd have to give speeches to rooms of 16 and 17-year-olds that would not make eye contact intentionally because they did not want you to feel comfortable, or they would not laugh at your jokes during humorous oral interp because they did not want the judge to think you were doing well. So, you know, have some tough audiences. And people might ask questions just trying to one-up you, and maybe they've got their ego. It's usually something about them, but they might ask questions that are in bad faith. Again, they're not trying to necessarily drive knowledge forward. They're just trying to win. So some people like that type, and that can be fine. As a speaker, I don't get along well with contrarians. And so what I usually do is just say, "Okay, thanks, let's take this offline." You can acknowledge it, interesting point, I'm going to move on. You can also end the conversation. And, you know, if it does cross a line where you feel like this is getting into harassment or something, or violating a code of conduct at an event, you know, you should feel welcome to talk with an event organizer, a friend, someone from your work, school, cohort. and just talk through what happened. Again, you know, these situations are extremely rare. I just want to tell you all that you have power and that you as a speaker deserve respect and support, and engaging tough questions, but not questions that are going to cut at you. So in summary, your voice is important, and we want you giving speeches and tech talks and presentations. Please keep your slides simple. Practice a lot, practice more than I did for this presentation. Question and answer sessions are an opportunity, and we're going to share a link to these slides in Meetup afterwards so that you get links to all the cool graphic design assets and things. A couple last points is, as kind of a side project of Women Who Code Tokyo, some of us have created this project called speakher.jp. And it's a website database of women who are interested in public speaking in Japan. And our goal is to help reduce the number of all-male panels and events at events, or all-male panels at public events, and give people a list of women. I should say it's also inclusive of non-binary persons. We just want to help make more diverse panels of experts. So if you're interested, regardless of your level of speaking, if you're a woman or non-binary person, please go to speaker.jp, nominate yourself. If you know someone that would like to be nominated, please nominate them. And yeah, we look forward to hearing your voices in Tokyo. And here's our Q&A. Let me quickly show you what the bonus content slide might look like. Oh, this is kind of what it would look like. And then, oh yeah, I should name drop that there's going to be more events from Women Code Tokyo on public speaking, building your brand. So stay tuned for the 26th of November for this building your own brand event, which should be really exciting. Yeah, and then we'll open up to Q&A. You can either raise your hand or type in chat. Thank you so much. Let's see. When talking in Japanese people, I don't get many questions. May I ask how you encourage more questions from Japanese participants? I think I've only given one presentation to a largely Japanese audience, and that was a challenge too. I don't know if I have a good answer for that. I mean, I tried to make people feel welcome and say, please ask questions, but yeah. Anya, do you have anything to add? Or I guess you wrote.
Yeah, I wrote on the chat. I feel it depends on how the questions are asked, but on events where you have to raise your hand and speak in front of the people, it's quite rare to hear a lot of questions from Japanese audience, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let's see, what other ones? Recommendations for microphones. I think I'll just share the one that I've used, but again, I'm not like an audio. I bought this little Samson one off of Amazon.com in the United States. It was about $40. I was trying to do some podcasting, but other people might suggest. Yeah, I think again, only buy this stuff if you're doing it a lot, because it's definitely a financial investment. Let's see. Oh yeah, the Yetis. I've heard great things from the Yetis. How do you handle live coding? So I haven't done any live coding events as a presentation, although I've done a little bit of Twitch streaming, and that it's kind of like a new lifestyle thing, as people might be live streaming their coding on Twitch or YouTube. For API keys, I would make a key that I would revoke immediately after the event with really scaled down permissions, or try to get around that scenario by maybe like setting up a proxy or something that hides your API key. Like you could set up a Node.js Express, I don't know, a little server in Express and Node.js that hides an API key, and then your API call would get proxied through that server. I would just say, make sure if you're going to do live coding or something, practice it a lot. Perhaps have a video backup in case something goes wrong, or screen share backups. Actually, I'm wrong. I haven't done live coding where I'm like typing on the computer, but I have done events and workshops where I've asked people to copy and paste code. And what I did is I had a lot of gists in GitHub with the specific snippets of code. And then I tell people, go through it here, go through it here. That's the type of talk you're going to want to practice a lot. And you're going to want to practice it on an audience with fresh eyes, because there can be a lot of misunderstandings. And those are some of the hardest presentations to give. But the workshop type things can be very rewarding for the participants when done right. Yeah, any other questions? See, are there any raised hands or anything? And Ania, do you have anything to add with live coding?
I didn't do any live coding, but during the Code Crusader's final presentations, my other group had a big live coding part, and it failed a lot at the end. So fortunately, they had everything recorded, and they just showed the recording. So that was good.
Yeah, just to have your backup, because often, oh, something will be down and you'll be on a weird conference Wi-Fi and there will be a firewall. So there's always things where it's like, what's going on? Yeah. Cool. Yeah, again, if there are no more questions right now, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter. Women Who Code, WWCode Tokyo for the Women Who Code account. I'm Stone Cold Kilzer, and Ania is Ania-chan for. And yeah, thanks so much. We're going to stay tuned. We're going to move into an optional workshop part. We're going to end the recording. So let me just pause the recording right now, and then or stop the recording.